Hi, and welcome back to the panel room. We've already gone off the rails for the evening, but tonight we're here to talk about these heroes of a certain age and other heroes of a certain age. I'm your host, Jim Nettles, and before we dive into all of whatever is about to happen, let me make sure that everybody knows who you guys are so that I can share the blame. Jeannie.
Hi, y'all. I'm Jeanne Adams. I write urban fantasy, paranormal, romantic suspense, and space adventure with my friend Nancy Northcott. And of course, I have opinions.
Alledria.
Hi, I'm Alledria Hurt, and I write horror, fantasy, and sci-fi under my own name. It's kind of amazing.
Jenny.
Hi, I'm Gini Koch. I write the Alien Catherine Kitty Cat series for dog books. I also write under a variety of other pen names and in all lengths and genres. And I am proudly a woman of a certain age.
Oh, I love it. I'm just gonna go because it's me by odds. Hi, I'm Marisa Wolf. I have recently entered my mid-40s, so I feel like I'm becoming certain agey, and I love it. I write science fiction and fantasy and all the little corners in between. I've written in a bunch of shared universes like The Four Horsemen and Hit World, and my debut solo novel is coming out from Baen in February of 2024.
Woo-hoo. So let's actually start with the first question. What is a hero? We're here to talk about heroes of a certain age. So before we talk about them hitting that certain age, because we know most true heroes never make it that far, how are we defining a hero? Jeannie.
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess you could be blunt and say it's the protagonist of the story. But I think we in general define a hero as somebody who's taking the risks in a story, taking a risk to put themselves out there to change an outcome or to, make a difference. Sometimes all unwilling.
Alledria.
Well, sometimes I think the hero is the one making the decisions that the normal person is not going to make. That they are literally just like, this is what the normal person would do, so I'm going to do the opposite.
So speaking of, Jenny, how do you define a hero?
I actually define it as the person who saves the day. So it's not also always the person you might think it would be, but it's whoever manages to save the day is the hero. So I think you can have more than one hero in any given situation or any given story.
Marisa?
So all of those. I also love the little bit of internet wisdom that's been going around of like the hero will let their love interest burn to save the world, where the villain will burn the world to save their love interest. So the sacrificing of everything for the greater good is the hero. That's what I'll add.
So, one of the things that we see in a lot of modern tales, right, is this idea of the hero has to be young, vigorous, foolish enough because they don't have enough life experience to know that this is a bad idea. But when we look then at, let's when you start getting into that a little bit older, 30s, 40s, decrepit, that's me. Sorry. When you're making your way forward, one of the things that a lot of the time we look in fiction and the stories that we get, it's that idea of youth and exuberance is kind of what wins the day. It's that not having the experience that says, yeah, I can do that. It's that belief, that unerring belief and faith that you're probably a little bit indestructible that leads a lot of the young heroes that we've written. It's that whole idea of, but I must. It's the right thing to do. When we start hitting heroes, they're a little bit older, a little bit more mature. A lot of the time, these are people that have seen it. They've been there. They've done that. And yet they still make the decision to get up or don't. So, Alledria, what is it for you? Where's kind of that nice cutoff point where we would sort of start looking at that idea of that certain age where heroes are a little bit more mature and maybe it's a little bit harder to be the hero?
I think it has to do with responsibility, not as much age. Because when I think about a mature person, I think about someone who has taken on responsibility for other people or has become attached, sometimes irrevocably, to another person. So, like, you get married, you have kids, you do things like that. And sometimes that makes you a more mature individual. Sometimes it doesn't. I'm just going to say. But I think responsibility outside of oneself is what actually defines maturity. Like, one of the characters that I remember writing was a mother, and she changed her entire life because she had kids. And then her sister came and kidnapped her kids, and then she became the hero of the story because her sister's.
Checks out.
All right, Jenny, how about you?
I agree with Alledria, and I think on average, that means you're starting to be in your 30s, your mid to late 30s, because that's about the time that, again, on average, you've started a family, you're in a career, you're raising kids, blah, blah, blah. I think, however, that a lot depends on your medium. In visual mediums, men are allowed to look a little older than women. So for women, it's probably their 30s. For men, it's probably their 40s. But I think once you start getting past 50, you're in that, whether you want to be or not. You might be the person that's in the best shape and can run a marathon and then run another marathon. But by gosh, if you're 52, you're ancient to the majority. So I think it's both a societal expectation and a societal norm to say, yeah, that's probably going to start in your 30s, maybe your 40s, but really, I think by the time you're hitting your 50s, you're really the grizzled veteran. And if you think about what we see it depicted as the grizzled veteran, that guy is not really, 35 under most circumstances. In dystopian, yeah, that guy's 35 and seen it all, right? But and in your Old West and in epic fantasy, yeah, someone that age can already be a grizzled oldster. But I'm really with Alledria. I think it's when you've had enough life experience where you have the responsibility and the knowledge that you need to do something.
Thank you for not using the word mature there, because just because we've got that experience
I was looking
likely means we were not mature enough to decide that was still a bad idea.
Mm-hmm.
So, Marisa, how about you?
Agreed. I think it's when the stakes change. So the young, innocent farm boy can just hear, like, the world is at risk and it needs you to save it. And he's like, cool. Yeah. All right. But the certain age heroes, it needs to be like, the stakes need to be more serious. Like, my family is at risk or has already been taken out, or my friends from the glory days are going to die if I don't go save them. Or whatever, like the stakes are so much more personal, and it's still about saving the day and saving the world or saving the whatever, but it's also very much about also, like, you killed my kid, you're all gonna burn, or whatever the stakes are. You took my kid and look out. I feel like that tends to come with it because they have the experience to know, like, it doesn't stop here. Like, I'm taking this really personally, but I'm old enough to know you don't stop with this one grievance, so I got to handle it.
Jeanne?
Well, I agree with what everybody said, but I also want to echo Alledria that sometimes it's not about age, it's about experience. It's about life experience, because, there are some great characters who are young but very old in terms of their life experience. And some of them are brilliant characters, but they've had the life experience to know, may not want to do that. may not want to rush headlong into, right? But I think one of the fun things about both writing and reading or seeing characters who are older is there is always much more of the element of cunning and thoughtfulness as opposed to rushing headlong. There's the 30 men guard the castle gate, and how are we going to get in? Thinking it through as opposed to just storming the castle.
Y'all are no fun.
What do you want us to say?
I have no idea.
Okay.
I'm still the juvenile delinquent that would
Charge.
Leroy Jenkins charge.
He's got on the shirt. He's got on the shirt, man.
It's true.
True.
Seemed like a good idea at the time. Will be on my gravestone or my urn or what gets launched into space.
Yeah. Or in my defense, I was left unsupervised.
Yeah.
Under a full moon.
What could you expect?
Cooler. So Jenny.
Yes.
Let's talk about genre.
Yes.
So let's talk about the impact of this idea of age and experience by genre, right?
Awesome. Super here for that one. I think in mystery in particular, especially obviously any mystery, the experienced person is most likely to be your main detective, your main person. Father Brown is not a young spring chicken. Jessica Fletcher is definitely a lady of a certain age, and so forth. And nobody, even going back, none of, to the mystery shows and novels of the 70s and the 80s, nobody is a spring chicken solving these crimes. There's almost none. You literally have to be in kids programming. The Scooby-Doo gang are young, okay, but they're a cartoon, a beloved cartoon. Don't knowing this is the do here, but I think that mystery in particular allows for people of a certain age, in no small part because Sherlock Holmes was not a child. Sherlock Holmes was an adult man who already had a career. Watson was already a war veteran. Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple they were not children when they started. So I think the predecessors of, the ones you've looked to and say, oh, well, these created and built this genre, those were all older. I think that in epic fantasy in particular, there's a huge focus on youth, with the grizzled oldster there to help. Science fiction, it just depends on what you're going for. Westerns, honestly, if you had a grizzled oldster, that person was already settled down. You didn't live very long. 35 is not is middle age. Actually, you're probably later middle age unless you were lucky. In the Old West. So Westerns and that kind of thing, you always are going to have, I would call middle of the road heroes. You'll have the younger, but you'll also have the older guys that are more experienced. And then it's not the age, it's the mileage going there. So I'll stop because those are three, and we have three other people in many more genres.
Marisa?
I really liked the resurgence or surgence of older main characters in action movies. So like The Expendables, Old Guard, Gunpowder Milkshake, where like the main assassin is like hot late 20s, early 30s, but the people who save her are her mother's age and her mother. Spoilers, sorry, but like just like some badass ladies being badass into their 50s and 60s. And I love that. Helen Mirren in Red. Give me the older action hero who has seen the nonsense and is like, no, this time I brought a rocket launcher. Like, I'm prepared for these things. I love that addition to the action genre. And I feel like we're starting to see it in some sci-fi and some fantasy too, especially urban fantasy. I think you're starting to get some older characters that aren't just there to be the wise elder that then dies 20 minutes later chapters. So I'm really enjoying that. It's almost like as a new generation of nerds gets older, they're like, wait a second, why don't we?
My hero live a little longer.
That's right. He doesn't have to be all done at 21. What happens
Yeah,
after that?
I'm starting to feel really bad about the fact that I'm about the same age as Alec Guinness in Star Wars. That's really starting to bother me.
I'm getting real close to some Golden Girls ages, friends. Like, that is bananas to me. But also, like, yeah, I would love to live with my friends and wear caftans all day. So, right.
Jeannie?
Well, I sort of agree with Marisa and obviously with Jenny too about the acceptable genres for age. I think that is changing, though, as Marisa indicated. I mean, the global success of things like Taken and Kandahar, and the experienced, in this case, operative who is moving through a scenario. I also have to say, I really love the fact that probably the last 10 years or so, these people take a beating. I mean, and it's not I got hit, but I got back up again. They get back up, but they've grown a lot of it.
Right. Just dragging the arm.
Yeah, I love that more realistic, I get pounded, and yes, I am going to get up and I'm going to fight to the death, but damn, that hurt. I really love too that we're seeing older protagonists even in just run-of-the-mill cop shows. I mean, they've let Mariska Hargitay age in place. Tom Selleck is the police commissioner, and he's the focus of the show, really, even though the younger ones are kind of running around doing the things. Like, he's kind of the driving force behind how things come out. And you see it kind of in one of the series that's really interesting to me is like the Chicago Fire, Chicago Med, Chicago, whatever the third one is, I can't remember. But they have an age range in there that is from the green rookie who's like rolling up hoses because that's a rookie's job, and the guy who's getting ready to retire and turn his papers in or her papers in and be like, yeah, one more fire and I'm done. And you see it in the hospital setting too, the ones that are kind of jaded and sarcastic. And then you have a couple that are older characters that aren't jaded and sarcastic. And it's kind of a neat change that I think we're seeing. And I like it.
Wait, I started jaded and sarcastic. How am I supposed to?
Yes, I know. About 10, right? Somewhere around 10.
Yeah, we're just
11?
catching up. That's all.
Yeah.
Back it down. Alledria, how about you? What are your thoughts in terms of genre and how we treat folks?
I think it's been interesting as, like, when you think about superheroes, of course you think about the like buff 20-something, but if you look at Marvel and DC, they've always kind of played they'll like alt universe old to see what some of these older characters would be like Wolverine, who's an old man, a really old man.
And when he says,
or finding out what the next generation is going to look like with them with the first generation as parents. It's like, oh, talk about heroes of a certain age when you're talking about back in my day to your kid who is also a superhero.
They played with that a little bit in The Incredibles. And they also played with
and I want to say Sky High.
I was just saying Sky High.
Sky High was so good.
And a couple of other things where they literally just went, so what happens if we make you into a parent?
Yeah.
And there's another one of you running around.
That's just totally culminated with Jack.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
What happens if you mix those genes?
Oh my.
Yikes. Yikes happens.
Yeah.
Well, and that's kind of where I want to steer is this idea of, when you've got the younger hero, they don't have necessarily the same kinds of responsibilities of family, of job, of things like this. I mean, so when you start writing somebody that is, a little, even just a little bit older, if you've got somebody who has a real relationship, if you have somebody who has a job, a career, just sort of all the things that they have to look at. It's not just let me go charge into battle. I may die, but I'll be the hero. Now it's the oh, good God, I got to go tell my boss I'm going to be gone for 2 weeks while I go run off to be the hero. And have my boss tell me, are you out of your mind? And yeah, I still got to go do a thing. When we look at that idea of responsibility, because that's kind of one of the keys we keyed in on here of it's not age, it's not maturity. Thank God for me. It's that idea of experience and having done and yet still being willing to stand up and go, I guess I got to go do that. When we look at motivations, when we look at all of this. So Marisa, how do you look at that idea and the importance, and I would also say the additional burden that some knowledge and experience and maturity would mean for somebody to stand up and be the hero? Not to mention the aching knees, but when you look and think about that, who comes to mind for you? What are examples like that? And how do you see that kind of additional weight coming into play?
Yeah, I think so. Avatar, The Last Airbender, into Korra, the second set, did an amazing job with that, because you've got the new Avatar and she's young and she's the Avatar. You got to deal with it. But then you've got the oldest generation that was from Avatar Last Airbender, all the way grown up, and dealing with things or not as they see fit. And then you've got that middle generation that has also grown up between like the time of the first series and the second series. And I think part of it is like with any character development, they're whole people. And you have to let them be whole people. So some people in their 40s or 50s might like the first drop of like adventure is back. I'm out. Goodbye. I love you, family. See you on the flip side. Somebody needs me. Thank God. And then you've got the very reluctant ones who are like, I can't, like, I've got to protect my wife. I've got to protect my family. I've got to protect my business, whatever it is. And then you can follow these different people on their different paths and being whole people of what is important to them and how they balance it and how they make those trade-offs. And you can play it for humor and you can play it for tragedy and sometimes both with the same character. So I feel like Legend of Korra did a really, really good job with that. And that's usually what I look for. Either if I'm writing it, or if I'm reading it, it's just, are they whole people? And are we really grappling with this in a way that makes sense to that character? It might not be the way I would do it, but I probably also wouldn't Leroy Jenkins into conflict either. So I know who I am as a person. But that like following the character through the logical steps for that character as they are facing what they're facing.
Jeannie? You're on mute.
No, you're on mute. Come back to us.
I keep muting for the dogs barking. So, I don't know. I think that it's really clever to do it because I think it appeals to so many different readers. And as Marisa said, you get that sort of three-dimensional whole person kind of look at not only the character, but the adventure itself. You get a more three-dimensional look of, okay, is this even smart? Do we even want to do this? Right? Yeah. Not just the call to glory, but is that smart? Is that a side we want to be on? And I think that three-dimensionality really appeals to people in our era now, in our modern era. I think people look more for that. They look more for, if it's a young character, are they thinking? Or are they rushing headlong? And I think people have less and less use for the rushing headlong. Patricia Reedy did it really well in her Dragon series and one of her other series where the heroine she's probably in her late 30s, early 40s, and she's a parent. And it isn't really, she's asked to go on this quest. And she's like, no, not doing it. And it isn't until her daughter is kidnapped that she literally pulls the floorboards up and gets her sword out. And until she does that, you don't know she's the hero. And when Cimarine finally pulls her sword out, and she's like, I'm too old for this shit, basically. Okay. It's one of those moments where you're like, oh my gosh, this is so cool. But I think we see that too. I mean, it started, I think, sort of back with the Shadow and the Phantom in the comics, because the Phantom is passed from generation to generation. And that was the first time I ever remember seeing anything generational at all. But I think we're going to see more and more of it across the age spectrum because of things like foundational things like Marisa was joking about it, but the Golden Girls and things where we really appreciated the generational differences. Jenny, you mentioned Jessica Fletcher. I mean, I think we kind of appreciate it more and want it just to see people, not just the young bucks going and doing it.
Alledria?
I think my favorite, like, older character who is still like, I'm gonna go do this. You watch this in Batman. You start out with Alfred Pennyworth, who is absolutely a hero in his own right, who is basically training Bruce and then Bruce ends up with Terry McGinnis in Batman Beyond. And you're like, are you serious? Old man Bruce is still running around, still trying to be still doing the hero. I mean, granted, they're in the technological future where you can like rebuild a human being, but still, he's like not just old, he is old.
It's got an E on the end of it.
Yes, there's a lot there.
He's like he should be the guy who should have hung up the cape. But apparently he decided it wasn't worth it hanging up the cape after a while because he's like, this still needs doing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Jenny, how about you?
Well, I'm going to echo on Batman, I think, and not just Batman Beyond, Batman in a wide variety of iterations, especially there's, the whole Bat family subgenre out there. Batman does it really well, and they do it very well in a variety of other ways. Where you see him aging and older, and it depends on who the writer and the artist are for how decrepit he is and how active he is. But there's a lot of Batman passing on the torch. And really, there has been because of Robin, no matter what. He's always passing on a torch because he's always got some youngster that it's better to keep them up front where you can see them and catch them if they need you to than wonder what the heck mischief they're getting up to. I think the X-Men also do a really good job with this. We've seen, we've gotten to see Professor X and Logan/Wolverine young all the way through, but we've also gotten to see a lot of the main X-Men. They allowed them to age somewhat, though, Jean Grey has to remain virginal. If someone's had a kid, it's her clone, not her. Yeah. No one's ever touched her. I could do a 2-hour rant on that. But,
I will join you for that. Yeah, let's do it.
Can we have the Jean Grey Pristine Virgin rant panel sometime soon?
Yeah.
Jean Grey is Madonna motif. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she gets to be all of them. It's just, if it's her clone or her alternate reality.
Her clone gets to actually have sex and have children. Yeah. So go clone, right? Yeah. Bill Madeline Pryor. Anyway, I think all the X titles do a good job of showing that, and then they also do. But I think we mentioned it earlier, but the movies Red and Red 2, Retired Extremely Dangerous, especially Red, where they're going through, and you've got, and I cannot believe I've been blanking on this man's name for 3 days now, and I can't tell you why.
John Malkovich.
No, he was fabulous. No, the handsome younger one. Bones.
Yes.
Yeah, right. Okay, I can't remember his name. I love this actor. Okay, I adore him, and I think he's handsome. And I can't. His name is just like escaping me, and I can see other people.
Yes, I can list his entire filmography at this point.
We have Google.
Are you talking about Jefferson Brown or Carl Urban?
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban.
Carl Urban. So
this is what happens when you get to be a hero of a certain age and you take head injuries.
Right.
The
Carl
internet's
Urban is
for.
now here of a certain age, but when Red was coming out, he wasn't. He was the young buck, and the guy who's going to hunt down the old geezer, right? And it just was so good, showing the differences. Like, yes, youth and skill is always going to lose to old age and treachery.
That's right.
So I love it. Red and Red Shoe are two of my favorite movies. So I thought all of those did a really good job.
So, one of the things that I think is always fun to look at, because, and often granted, we know it's been done as a gimmick, right? But two of the most fun ways I've seen people play with that idea of age and maturity and try to blend them in a way that really shows off what happens if people have that knowledge and experience and yet still have the body to go do something about it. I look at Old Man's War from John Scalzi.
Mm-hmm.
Where basically they're taking clone bodies. We take the old experienced, mind, and we shove it in the nice, new, young, polished, hormonal body, and we turn them loose in a war zone. And the other one for me, and this is the one that my sister swears is one of my spirit animals, is 5 from Umbrella Academy.
Mm-hmm.
Having been gone through, lived a full life, and then come back and stuck back in the body of a child. And having to grow again, but yet has all of that grumpiness and all of that absolute bloodthirsty when it's needed sort of motif. I have no idea why my sister and my spouse and everybody else apparently think that's one of my spirit animals. But
Your soul
anyway,
brother. He belongs to you in soul. Yeah.
So Jeannie, when we think about ways that this idea of age, and I think this is one of the things that age and experience now, we're starting to see a lot more twisting about it and playing with this idea. What are some ways that you've seen it played with that you like, or maybe you looked at it and you said, yeah, that really shouldn't have been done that way?
Well, I think you get a great glimpse of it in Freaky Friday and some of the movies of that ilk where it's 16 Again, and a couple of those that are really kind of comedies and sort of playing it for laughs, but you sort of see what the consequences are. You see it in Doctor Who too, because Doctor Who has eons of knowledge passed into a different body. And the same thing, I can't remember the character's name in Star Trek Deep Space Nine that had
Right.
and
Right.
that's a
That's
rebirth.
yeah.
And
Oh,
so
True.
you have all that sort of ancestral knowledge and history and that sort of thing. And I think we play with it a lot in vampire stories too, where we have this person who's hundreds of years old, and sometimes they actually learn something from it. Sometimes they're just as feckless as they were the day they were changed. And I think it's really done well. Like in Interview with a Vampire, I think you get to see both sides of that. Same thing with Lost Boys. You get to see some people use it for good, if you will, or use it logically and practically and build up their discovery of witches. He sort of builds up his arsenal of information and wealth and all that sort of thing. And some people are just Spike all the way.
Oh, Spike.
Yes, he does learn, but when we first meet him,
Not so much.
pretty feckless. Yeah.
A bit.
So I think we get a lot of it there, but sometimes the Freaky Friday ones crack me up because you sometimes think, at least I do, wow, youth is wasted on the young.
Right.
I wish I had that energy.
Alledria?
The flip side of Freaky Friday is 13 going on 30, which I thought was a very interesting sort of play on what would happen if I was very, very young and suddenly I'm an adult.
Or Shazam.
I think there's also, is it Big?
Big.
It's like that.
Yeah.
And it's like suddenly I have all of the like power of being an adult without being an actual adult. And then we find out that doesn't generally work very well, because 13 going on 30, what do you actually know about being 30 at 13? So, yeah. But I find that to be a fun way to kind of play with it, just to see what would happen. Although part of me kind of wants to write what happens when mom suddenly becomes grandma.
It's fun.
That could be a lot of fun too.
Yeah.
Mom gets to relax. So
I know, she's like, this is amazing.
Now you have your homework assignment, Alledria.
Nice.
Write that horror story.
Yeah.
Oh, so you went right to it being horror. I was like, I think it'd be a delight.
Well, first thing that came to mind when Alledria said that was the Shazam movies, the recent Shazam movies, because they spend a good quarter of the movie reflecting on the fact that he doesn't know how to handle it.
Yeah, he's actually,
and he's like doofy about the fact that I can levitate.
Let's be honest, I'd do that today. So, Jenny.
Well, going back to the flashing in movies, Peggy Sue Got Married, I actually think handled that really, really well, because things did get changed, and things did get fixed. And you saw the influence of her. If I could do it now, I could do it all over again, I'd change some things, and she does change those things, and it changes lives actually for the better, which was one of the nice things about that movie. And I don't really remember the question anymore because I got really wrapped up in what she and Alledria were talking about.
Yeah.
So I'm just like, yeah, that's really interesting. And I like Peggy Sue Got Married, and I don't remember what Jim asked. What did you ask?
Fun ways to play with it.
Well, I mean, so
Yeah, I mean, yeah.
if we kind of look at that idea of how...
Hi, everybody. Sorry I am late. I got double booked.
Oh, no.
Stephanie,
So I'm running from one to the other.
would you like to do a quick introduction since we're slipping you in?
Oh, man, I missed most of it. Hello, everybody. My name is Stephanie Burke. I'm a USA Today best-selling author of over 100 novels. And I'm late. I'm sorry, but I love older characters because I'm kind of older myself.
We're all same. Yeah.
So, Jenny, here's a question, kind of the question for you is that idea of there's a lot of different ways we see people play with this idea of age and experience and characters, and so when you look at that, when you see people, how are ways you see it being twisted that, you like, you don't like, what are, and really kind of how does that reflect for the story?
I'm going to talk about my own stuff right now because I think we've talked about a lot of other really good examples. But in my Alien series, my heroine, Kitty, is 27. So she's still at the young, yes, I think I'll charge in age. But her mother and father, as it turns out, sorry, this book's been out since 2010, so spoiler alert. Her mother and father are actually leading secret lives she knows nothing about. She's completely clueless. And her mom is like the queen of anti-terrorism and counterterrorism. She is just as kick butt as you can possibly get. And she's super proud, but this is a supporting character, right? So Kitty can go to her parents for advice and help and discover things out. And mom and dad will give advice and help, but it's Kitty's show and they'll let her do it. Mom steps in when mom needs to step in. And there are times when she does, but for the most part, she's trying to let her daughter have her own head. And I think that there are lots of good properties, none of which, like Carl Urban's Name, all of them have escaped as a flock of butterflies out of my head. But there are a lot of good ones where you see a torch being passed over and over again. I mean, Star Wars did it. I don't think in the later stuff they did it all that well, but they did it. And that was a continual thing in Star Wars where you're seeing people mature and somebody younger is coming in, and now you're maturing and someone younger is coming in. And I think I can't remember which one of us said it. It's like, I think it was Marisa. The younger generation just went, I'm going to be older than 30, aren't I? Wow, maybe I better start liking characters. It's not Logan's Run after all. So I think things like that are done really. There's a lot of it out there, and like Jeanne said, Yahoo! It's about time.
And for those that are not of a certain age, Logan's Run is a story that you'll have to go do your homework.
Oh, go Google it. Yeah.
What a great classic.
Yeah.
So, Marisa, how about you? What are your thoughts about when we see twists and turns with playing with ages?
Yeah, I loved it in Everything Everywhere All at Once. So you start off, things are going weird and sideways, and the main character is a woman of a certain age. She's a grown daughter that she is estranged from, and a dad that she's taken care of, and all of the things. And when things start to go sideways, she goes, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Rightly so, and very compellingly so. Did you like that I had an F-bomb also ready to go?
I am so proud.
Thanks. I was well prepared. But she very much is like, why? But then it becomes a very personal story, and I guess it's only like a year or two old, so I won't go too deep. But basically, her perspective and her ability to make a connection and look at all the different ways her life could have gone from the standpoint of like middle aged is so powerful, and is why the movie resolves the way it does. So without that perspective that she has, and that ability to stand there at that point in her life and look back at the possibilities and then make a connection with the character who really desperately needs that connection, the movie wouldn't work. Like you couldn't solve it. The entire universe would end. But because she has lived the life she has lived and can look at the lives she could have lived, she is able to use that perspective to do the things to save the universe. And I thought that was an incredible way of doing it. That wasn't like, wasted life, old lady, we don't care. It was really powerfully done. I loved it.
So,
and then there were hot dog fingers. So
yeah, well, that's what happens. You get old enough,
you just get hot dog fingers. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So Stephanie, when you look at the idea of stories, and we've talked about a couple of different ways, but thinking about age, thinking about maturity and experience, right? How do you look at the idea of stories where it's kind of thrown on its head? Where we talked a little bit about like the Freaky Fridays and things like that. But this idea of age and experience and how it gets reflected in stories. Is there something that works for you, something that doesn't, something you like, something you don't?
Oh, yeah. The first thing I could think of is the movie Red and its wonderful sequel, because that movie actually threw you into the lap and into the mind of somebody who had this wonderful, spectacular, exciting job, traveled everywhere, all the women. I mean, you assassinate people, but still it was like a good life. And then suddenly he's obsolete. He was the thing that actually kept the agency running. And then boom, suddenly he's no longer necessary. And when he gathered up all of his friends, because something happened that nobody wanted to believe the old people about, what they did was they brought their combined energy and knowledge together, and they slapped the young ones in his face. Oh my goodness. Poor Carl Urban, he just couldn't catch a break. And it was because it was a lack of experience. Now, instead of putting old people out to pasture, what we should do is like what a lot of native tribes and indigenous people do. They respect their elders. They sit down and they learn from them. I mean, I learned a lot of things that I know from sitting on my mom's and my auntie's knees and listening to them having that discussion. I mean, I have survival down to a T. So, I mean, I even have a friend who said, well, since you're of that age now and you know so much, we'll just have to carry you. You can be the wise woman. And I was like, wait, what? The wise woman's usually like planted someplace and just give a cryptic message. Yeah, but I mean, Red amplified that for me. And then you can go back into the past, no batteries required. And Cocoon. It seems like we're doing less and less movies about people of a certain age now than we did in the past. But in all these, you have a lot of elderly people who are written off, who got up and showed their strength, to show that they're still viable, to actually show that they still matter. And they can do what anybody else can do, but they might be able to do it a little bit faster, a little bit quicker, and a little bit more correct because of the knowledge that they've gained over the years. So, I mean, I love movies and books and anything with the older character. I don't care if it's a May-December relationship or anything like that. It shows we're still vital. And I noticed that as I got older, the characters in my novels got older along with me. So, I mean, that's a lovely point because we're trying to show our point of view. We're not boomers. We're Generation X. And Generation X learned X, Y, and Z. And when you don't do it, I mean, you have some people with that fall in that in between. But when they do something and figure it out, it's like, no, we already did that. Or this is what we were telling you, you bother not to listen. So, I mean, a lot of things could be settled in this world if people just listen more and respected their elders.
So, Stephanie, I want to steal a little bit off of what you just mentioned. It's the idea that, especially in Western culture, we've gotten really bad about, instead of taking our elders, respecting our elders, and looking at them as the resources, the wealth of knowledge, and the collections of bad experiences that they survive or poor choices that they survive, we tend to look at them as throwaways. We tend to look at them as used up. How do you think we can use, and the change in story that we see going on right now, how do you think we can use that to actually revitalize how we look at people as they age through culture?
We need to once again go back and look at these movies from the past. They showed vitalization. Nowadays, it's like they know everything. The people who are writing, they know everything. Everything has to be around their age. It has to be this, and because they know. But in actuality, they really, really don't. And sometimes they take offense when somebody older comes in and tries to explain some stuff. No, we don't want to be the wise women. So if we want to make a change in that, we need to start bringing these elder characters back in. I include me in that. I'm 50, so bring it back in because we're still viable, but you have to show the new generation that's because, I mean, they didn't see it. A lot of Generation X disregarded their parents. And so the millennials that are coming up are doing the same thing. So we need to actually, through entertainment, through societal things, through media, even through fandom, we need to show these elder characters being vital. And we're not more than just the person sitting on a hump, sitting out giving you sage advice. No, we still move. We can walk. I cosplay. I mean, I'm crippled and old, but I still cosplay. Oh, yeah. So, I mean, we need to show that, yes, we are vital. Yes, you're going to rule the world in the future. But before you get to that point, you need to step back, pay attention to what you're doing and ask somebody who's already been there. It's all about experience. And when you impress upon young people that you're doing great, okay, but look how many loops that you had to jump through to actually get to where you are. But if you just came and asked me or somebody my age, we could have told you the proper way to do it because it's all about experience and lack of experience. So, I mean, that's kind of what's holding it up. And you don't see in media today old people being vital.
Yeah, stop killing off the mentors.
Yes, yeah. Thank you.
Like step one, like Obi-Wan didn't have to die right away. You don't have to be like, Han Solo has a son. Now he's dead. Here's Leia. Now she's dead. Like, just stop killing them.
In a lot of movies, you'll have space exploration and they're on a ship for the first time. And what happens? The oldest person who is there, who knows what's going on in the first 10 minutes of the movie. So it's like, no, I have enough common sense to last through that. You did all this. No. And I would love to see the movie when somebody's doing something like a horror and the older people go, don't do that. Yeah, and they do it anyway. And the old people scoop the opposite direction.
It was Alien. Ripley said, don't let him in.
Yeah, she's like, don't do it. No, you did it.
Yeah. So no, we had that. We also had that one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I can see Alien, Alien in space, the retirement home. Right?
Everybody sitting, the alien sitting beside you.
Yeah, like, just rocking. It's fine.
It's all good. Either that or we'll make them pets.
Right.
Don't rock on their tails. So, Jeannie, what are your thoughts in terms of how? Because again, we know that story shapes culture. So, what are your thoughts on how what we see changing in story may be shaping culture for us?
Well, I'm with Stephanie in that I think we need a lot more of it. But I think, we get things like just the fact that we have things like Maverick making, being a blockbuster, where, he's aging out, he's going to retire. He's, he was the young buck in the first movie, and now that he's passing the torch, as I think Marisa was saying, the fact that that's still vital and sexy and interesting, and Ripley too. I was in a theater while watching that one, and everybody's going, "Listen!" Of course, there would be no movie if they had listened, but there's still a way to have the adventure. Even if you listen, if you have sat, as Stephanie said, at your elders' feet and listened and learned, it tickles me sometimes to see the TikToks and the Instagrams where people are going, I learned this thing from my grandma. Isn't this amazing? I'm going, I guess if you've never heard about how to cook an egg, yeah, I guess so. But so many things they think are revolutionary. It's like if you just sat on your granny's lap and listened, you would have probably learned something. Now, that's not to say that those people are always right either. But I think that we all as storytellers need to make sure we're bringing those more mature characters in, those seasoned characters, even if they're young, that have experience, that have a wiseness to them, as opposed to just, flinging cannon fodder into the story. Have the wise mentor not die. Make it to the end of the story. Yeah. But I think that's incumbent on us as storytellers to not get sucked into the Hollywood kind of let him sink or swim on his own because the mentor's dead.
Or the mentor's evil.
Yeah, it turns out to be evil or something like that. Yeah. Where do you, and then, we've had a few of them here and there, like True Grit or, and now we see a few more with Reds and the Expendables and Taken and things like that. I just think it needs to be more where we're not talking. The first headline isn't older star. The first headline is great action adventure, regardless of what the age of the person is. But that's Pollyanna, and I know.
Remember, Keanu Reeves just turned 60 doing John Wick.
I mean, John Wick, yeah, it's a perfect example.
Yeah, he says he's going to do them as long as people want to see him.
I want to see him do John Constantine again.
Yes.
Yeah, me too. I like that.
He does too. He mentioned that.
I love that movie. I know it wasn't canon, right? But I loved it.
We're doing What If now. It's fine.
So, Alledria, what are your thoughts in terms of the impact and the importance of how we tell stories now going forward with characters of that certain age?
Well, like everybody said so far, the best thing we can do is scribble, write, tell, talk about those people, have them center stage, make them the star. I mean, go mama who has to go get her sword out from under the floorboards of the house because something happened to her baby. Okay, let's go.
I've done that.
Jenny?
That's completely realistic.
I can't believe I'm going to say this, but as God is my witness, Airwolf actually did a really good job with that.
This is amazing.
Okay. It was really not a great series. However, the whole thing is that Ernest Borgnine is all that Jan Michael Vincent has left. And he is super protective, and Ernest Borgnine gets to give some wisdom and encouragement every single show. And it's like, it's the only one, the trauma is, he's only one person left in his life. But the person happens to be his mentor, who's like his family, and actually makes it through the entire short run of this series. But Airwolf did a really good job. These are the only nice words you'll ever hear me say about Airwolf. I really want everybody to take them in. But Airwolf did a really good job with that. And Buffy the Vampire Slayer did a good job with that because you've got the Giles character. And so she's always got, her mom is there until the body. She's always got some kind of mentor, but Giles is never evil. Giles never turns on her. He never gives up on her. He's there for wisdom. It's not his job. He isn't the slayer. He's the watcher, but he is there. So I think there are examples. They're just super few and far between. As soon as you roll to Angel, technically Angel's the oldest person on the show. So he has to be there is no wise oldster in Angel to keep them from messing up. Every character seems to be like trying to be older than the other characters, but your wisest person on that show is actually Cordelia. And so she would be the youngest. No, she was. She really was.
You're right.
But there are examples of it, but I agree. I really agree. And I can't remember. I think we were all saying it. Basically, don't kill them off. Ben Kenobi could have made it all the way through. Luke still would have had some motivation. Okay. This thing's trying to kill him and his new friends. Okay. That's a really good motivation. You don't have to watch your 5 minutes father figure die to be motivated. Basically, they fridged Obi-Wan so that Luke would have a reason to be a hero. I would like to lose fridging anywhere for any character all the way around. But I agree, keep the mentors alive. Let them mentor. Let them be around. The whole point of mentoring is that the people you're mentoring will go off and do their own thing and come back to you for guidance. So you'll be like, no, don't go there, right? Don't do that. But it doesn't mean you have to be out of the picture. You can be off having your own adventure.
Gandalf did it.
Right? Iroh and Avatar.
Yeah. Yes, exactly. Aang's off doing his own thing with Korra. It's just like, please stop being so young.
That's poor Iroh with his nephew. He's like, okay, you know what? Just gonna go do some pull-ups in jail for a minute. You'll
right. I was like the baddest of the badasses, and he's, but he doesn't have to be killed off for us to understand that this is a wise mentor trying to lead his nephew to the right path. He gets to just go over and make some really, really good jokes. So.
That reminds me of the Highlander.
Yeah.
The Highlander. Unfortunately, they sniggered my favorite character, Ramirez. Yeah. But Ramirez was competent with the sword. He came in and taught him, beat the crap out of him, explained exactly what it meant to be a Highlander. He went out like a boss, though, trying to protect his wife. But Connor was one of those rare ones who actually sat down and listened. And now, even though he doesn't look it, I think they got past having an older character like that. But he is over, 300 years old, and he cannot die. That's the line he used to get the ladies, and they always like whenever he said that. But I mean, that's an old guy in a young person's body, but still the old guy. And I'm just glad that they actually had Ramirez go out fighting hard, fighting the one enemy that nobody can, destroy, which made him, but they say the GOAT, the greatest of all times. He is the GOAT for me. So, I mean, things like that. But I mean, he could have lived. We just disregard the rest of the Highlander movies. We just stick with
there's only one.
And a TV series.
They said there could be only one.
That's
and
right. And there was.
To that.
Accurate.
Nice one. I got to use that.
So, Marisa, any other thoughts on how we move forward with our older characters?
Yeah, I mean, don't kill them is the headline. And then I think it's also like, let them, I know I've said it before, but like, let them be whole people. So they don't have to just sit around and dispense wisdom. They can do stuff. Like they can be Ramirez and be fighting. They can be Iroh and be training and making up for mistakes of their past. They can have their own storyline. I nearly, so spoiler for a book that's not out yet. So Beyond Enemies is coming out. And there is a character who fits this. And there was a moment that I could have killed her off, and I decided not to because I was like, no, stop it. She has things to do. She has things to do that we don't need to see right now, but they exist and they're important. And I think it came out of spite a little bit too, because I'm tired of watching the movies where they're like, here is my last final wish for you. I'm like, no, live. That's better. Living is a harder story to tell and a better outcome. Freaking do the hard thing, creators. We can do this.
Well, that kind of goes to the last thing I wanted to throw out here, talking about the older characters. Because the one thing we've talked about a lot is the fact that they have experience, they have wisdom, they have knowledge. they've survived their own poor choices, right? One of the things that we sometimes get to see is part of the reason that a good older character, that mentor, that person has the ability to provide the guidances they can is because of some of the choices they've made in the past. So, Alledria, sometimes we do get to see this in stories where that poor choice in the past questions, are they a hero? This goes to that idea of being a well-rounded character, or is it the matter that everyone, if ultimately to be the hero means sometimes you're doing some questionable things to get that experience to tell somebody? Don't do that. That's a bad idea. So, Alledria, for you, what's the idea of experience, both good and bad, and how that creates a much better ultimate hero in terms of these older characters?
Well, sometimes you have a hero of a certain age who was at one point the much younger hero. The dragon slayer who takes out the first dragon, his first dragon is going to have different thought process than the one who hasn't taken on his dragon yet. So, of course, making the choice to take on a dragon, which, of course, is a choice where you're like, is this suicidal or not? Is where that situation starts. Yes, it was a questionable decision to go take on a dragon. There was probably a good reason for it, but it's still a questionable decision. And then they survive. And then the even more questionable decision is, why would I ever do this again?
Fair.
I am the instrument of my own destruction.
All right.
I'm the
Why
master
would
of
I
my
ever
own
do this
demise.
again?
That's it.
I got out with all 10 fingers and all 10 toes. I should be just I should just be like,
Ride that
dude,
wave. Yeah.
I'm good.
Shot
Go
me
sail
ass
to the
up
west. Yeah.
every time. Jenny, how about you? What are your thoughts on?
I think Terry Pratchett does it best in Discworld with Cohan the Barbarian. And this is my week for blanking. I can't remember the name of the book that's in the Discworld series, but it's
There's
basically
40 plus of them. You're fine.
I know, right? I have them all. Cohan the Barbarian and the Horde are the Gray Horde. It's all ancient heroes, right? And Rinswood the Wizard is with them on this particular adventure, and they're just slicing through everything because they're so practiced that they don't even have to look. And they have a new member, Teach, who was a teacher. He fits right in with the Horde because he's so used to the attacks from students, right? So it's a very funny, but they're worried about Teach because Teach doesn't have the same years, right? He's a little bit younger. He's a little too young. And so it's a complete turnaround on in order to do this right, you have to be young. Part of the point is that they're so good at it. They don't have to do a giant sweeping thing or do a ha-ha. They can just go think, right? Because they already know the fastest way to kill somebody from any angle, any amount of people, everything else. But the kind of the joke is in the whole district. Hrun the Barbarian is young Conan, and Cohan the Barbarian is old Conan. The young one is much more expansive, and I'm going to do all these things. And the older one is much more, I really care about getting good dentures and soft toilet paper and the things that really, really matter. And yet they'll still teach younger people. So I think you can show older characters being hugely successful and trying to train younger characters to basically not make those mistakes. Stop swinging your axe like that, when if you just go like this, it's a much easier move. You're going to kill him anyway, much less bloodshed on you, more blood on him, that kind of stuff. So it's definitely doable. And I really think, like we're saying, why did I do it in the first place is a very different, your answer is very different when it's the first time than when it's the 100th time. When it's the 100th time, it's because, well, I did it 99 other times and I'm still here and I'm super good at it. So I'm going to keep doing that, right? Yeah. It's like Stephanie has over 100 titles. The first one, why do you do it? 99, 100, book 100. I have 99 of these. This is just what I do, right? Okay.
And the first one was like,
yeah.
I hope somebody likes this.
Right? And by book 100, you're like, if you don't like it, screw you.
That's on you. Yeah.
Right? And it's that attitude of I've already done it. And that's why you can mentor the younger people, because you're like, oh, my sweet summer child, look at all those extra steps you're taking that you don't need to take. Maybe you should, nope, you want to do it your way. You go ahead. I'll be over here having my own adventure while you go off, crash and burn, and then come crawling back to me, and I'll explain how we don't go towards the dragon from the front. We go towards the back, right?
And you take all the fun out of it.
I know. But that's why I'm on my 100th dragon.
Right.
You're on your first.
With all my fingers.
Marisa?
I think it's fun if they weren't the young hero and they were kind of the young bad guy. However, I also believe firmly that every villain is the hero of their own story. And I'll just go back to Avatar because character development. Iroh was a bad guy, like not to the Fire Nation. He was a war hero to the Fire Nation, but to the Earth Kingdom and to literally everybody else on that continent, he was a terrifying monster and he was a bad guy. And he came to the place where he was like, wish I had made different choices. And that's why he was trying really hard to mentor his nephew, who he loved very much, who he saw walking down that same path of patriotism over honor. And I think it added a lot more to it as you found out more and more of his story. It made it more real. It wasn't just like, I am wise and old, listen to me. It was, dude, I did it. I did that thing. That thing was bad. Don't do that thing. It's really going to suck and you're going to be real sad about it. And I think that's super cool. I think also Obi-Wan, as we learn more and more about his past in various shows, and sometimes effectively and sometimes not, Jedi Order wasn't necessarily a good thing, the way it was going. So that's interesting. And if he had stayed around to train Luke more, that could have been a really cool story because of the things Obi-Wan. We didn't know it in 1977, but we know now that he knew those things. So that could make for an interesting story. Like maybe they were the young hero, or they thought they were the young hero. And with perspective, they're like, here are things, young hero, that I would like you to know. Before you kill 100.
For a reason.
Yeah. Like, or before you kill 100 dragons and realize the dragons aren't the bad guy.
Mm-hmm.
Like that. Those are cool stories. So
Stephanie?
What pops to mind immediately is Asian culture. Do you remember those old Kung Fu movies we used to watch back when we were in kids? We had Kung Fu theater. And generally, it was a Pai Mei type character, the old guy with, the big old eyebrows and a long beard. Young heroes flocked to these old heroes just for the opportunity to call these guys master and learn from them. And that, of course, was all the freaking Kung Fu movies. Just about all of them had to start like this. Either you killed my master or my master sent me out on this journey to learn after I taught him all this stuff. I mean, it carried on into movies like Fudge. What was the one with
There's so many.
The Last Dragon?
Mm-hmm.
The Last Dragon, on, if y'all remember that movie. I mean, Tiamat, I think that was his name. His teacher was the one who taught him everything, and at the end gave him that little fake rip. This is a belt buckle. I sent you out to do this to learn for yourself. That type of thing. And then you also see it in anime. We have a line: do not mess with old heads in anime. They are unpatched. And like you said before, they're not running around and doing all these fancy moves. They're just sitting there, hands behind their back, eyes half closed. And when you come at them, you didn't even see them move. They're back in that same position. You're laying across the, you gone through a couple of rocks and some trees over there. So you get culturally, a lot of the culture gets pushed into their entertainment and their media. So it is an amazing thing that most of us need to actually learn that old people are vital. And a lot of these guys themselves have like really, really dark pasts, really, really histories, or they were once the bad guy and now they're trying to be the good guy. So, I mean, there's a million reasons for an older person to want to mentor a younger person. We just haven't touched on all of them. But Asian culture has been jumping on those things in their movies, the anime, the manga, and manhwa. I mean, there you see an old person, you either beg them for help or you stay far, far away from them. So, I mean, I would love to see more of that. When you have these very, very vital elder characters are like, doing the same thing. I have educated you. Get out my face. Don't come crawling back. Or when you get your butt kicked, please come back and I'll demonstrate what I've been telling you all along. So you can sit here and practice it another 99 times because your first time was buckus. So, I mean, I would love to see more of that because, we can still move. I remember shocking my kids when I was like 45. They said something about push-ups. You can't do this, old woman. I did push-ups. I remember my daughter was like, you can't catch me, ran outside and hopped in her car. I ran out and jumped on the hood. I was like, move me. She was like, oh, no, I can't do anything for mom. How did you do that maneuver? You Dutch dad, you dodged my fiance and you landed on top. Come back, little one, and mommy will educate you on this. So, I mean, there's a lot of things that we do. We can surprise people. And unfortunately, it like in Asian culture, it's not a surprise. It shouldn't be a surprise here. It should be just part of society, part of life. But yeah, truly, if you're ever doing anything in any parts of Asia, avoid the old guys because they will take your head off and then catch it before it hits the ground.
And there are tons of these movies still coming out, and I know this because my husband watches all of them religiously.
I like your husband.
He loves those.
I'm going to give you the last word here.
I think we're actually beginning to see more of it where, I mean, like both Hotel Transylvania and Kung Fu Panda both came to mind where there was so much respect for the elders and learning from the elders, but also how do you get experience? Bad judgment gives you experience, which gives you good judgment, right? And so you see it from all the sort of multi-generational perspectives. And I agree with Stephanie, a lot of the Asian dramas, the K-dramas and things that have done it far better than we could do. We're learning, but I think it's really just in the last 10 to 15 years though, where we're getting to the point where, when I was coming up, 50 was old, right? And it was as if people in their 50s decided, oh, I turned 50, so I'm old. And people who turn 50 now are still water skiing and mountain climbing and, and like you, Stephanie, I mean, sliding across the hood of the car, it's not, it's a factor of society has changed and accepted that you still do all these things and push-ups and whatever you want to do. You can do that when you're 80 if you want. 90, 100, former President Carter out there building houses when he was 96, right?
Oh yeah.
Go for it. All good. So I think we're shifting the collective narrative or have shifted it a lot. And I just want to see more of it.
Well, we could keep going for a few more hours on this Rockin' Porch, but before we get out of here, let's make sure everybody knows where to find you guys, website, social media, and of course, whatever that latest book is you need to let everybody know about. Add onto that to be read pile. So, Jeannie, you're up first.
Oh, boy. You can find me at JeanneAdams.com. You can find me here on ConTinual. You can find me on most social media. I mostly hang out on Instagram and whatever that thing is that used to be Twitter. And my next release is in the anthology, the Voldemort anthology by Mercedes Lackey, coming out in November. I haven't shortened that.
Awesome. I like that.
Alledria?
Alledria Hurt. Once again, you can find me if you can spell my name. It's Alledria. Hurt.com.
Jenny?
JinnyKoch.com. I'm all over the place on Facebook. I'm on Twitter X Twitter. I don't know what we call it. I'm on Blue
This week.
Sky. I'm on Pinterest. Oh, please stop. I'm not really on Instagram. I'm trying. The next place you can see me in person, I'm not sure if this will air before then. I'll be at World Fantasy Con in Kansas City. And my newest release is The Dawning of the New West by me writing A.E. Stanton that comes out next week.
Yay.
So
Marisa?
MarisaWolf.net or MarisaWolf.com. I got them both. If you're into spooky season, we've got an anthology coming out next month called 13 Stories of Horror. There's an apartment building on the cover. We feel very clever about our pun. And then, of course, in February, if you want to read about a girl and her tank and a potentially older wise mentor who does more than be a wise mentor and die, you can check out Beyond Enemies, coming from Bane, February 6th. And I'd love to hear what you think. And Instagram, if you like books and you like dogs, I'm at Book Dogs. Come find me.
Stephanie?
You can find me at author stephanieburke.online. All my socials are there. You can find me hanging out mostly on Facebook and Instagram. I'm trying to roll with the TikTok thing, but this is one point when I need a youthful person to teach the master, because I haven't quite gotten it down pat like the children got it, but I'll get there. So that's where you can find me.
And I've had the pleasure of trying to wrangle this crowd. You can find me at jamesbnettles.com, authoressentialsworkshops.com, speculative-fiction-academy.com, creatingprose.com, and of course, here at ConTinual. And we will see you guys again soon. I have to go make another poor choice.
Bye.